Hello there, welcome back. We're going to continue on here with position and warning systems. Next topic is flight status indicators. Pilots are concerned with the actual position of remotely operated or located components. What position are my flaps? Is the landing gear down or up? What about the autopilot or the radar? What is my fuel and oil pressure? So it's a number of things that they would like to know without, because they don't have the ability to go out and physically measure um, these items. Um, so uh, we have a position indicating our flight uh, control indicators. What's our title called? Flight status indicators. All right. You'll see something about the takeoff configuration warning system. You can see this in the panel. There's a takeoff configuration. Basically, it takes into account a number of items upon takeoff that the aircraft should have certain things configured, like your flaps extended and um, certainly your brakes would be off. I'm not sure what else right offhand. Why don't we take a look at the text. It's on the ground, and one or more thrust levers are advanced to the takeoff power position. A warning light and or oral warning will sound if the stabilizer trim is not properly set. I was about to say that too. I thought that was a little petty though. Trailing edge flaps are not in the correct position. Yes, our flaps. And any leading edge devices are not properly set. Okay, for the larger aircrafts, they have leading edge devices like slots or slats, or actual leading edge flaps, or the speed brake is not properly stowed. I kind of said brake just kind of in passing, so I'm glad I did. The warning signal stops when all the monitored devices are properly set. Um, okay, I'm starting to see my current presentation format is starting to be developed. Uh, the question that relates to the takeoff configuration warning system. Let's see what the question is. The primary purpose of a takeoff warning system is to alert the crew that a monitored flight control is not properly set prior to takeoff. The system is activated by, and it gives you a few different options. Our eyes automatically go to the thrust lever um, because if the thrust lever is put, you give full thrust, it means you want to take off. So A is an 80 knot airspeed sensor. No, that would you'd be too dependent on an instrument. You're not going to take off without advancing a thrust lever, and so it's a lot easier to measure that. B, an ignition system switch not set for takeoff. Yeah, the ignition system switch is going to have relatively little to do with takeoff. Certainly, you don't want to keep it off, uh, but once you're not starting the engine, automatically your ignition system switch is going to be the same once the engine's running. So it's only going to be the thrust lever. A typical takeoff warning indication system, in addition to throttle setting, monitors the position of which of the following? A. Ailerons, elevators, speed brake, and steerable fuselage landing gear. B. Elevators, speed brakes, flaps, and stabilizer trim. Kind of like that one. I'll come back to it. B. Aerodynamically actuated slats, elevators, flaps, and speed brakes. That one is equally good, isn't it? Matter of fact, it's got it's got the three words of elevator, flaps, and speed brake. So they all look good. You have to look at it a little closely though. I'm focusing on B or C. I'm not exactly sure why I got moved off A. Ailerons have really little to do with takeoff. I mean, once you are achieve liftoff, they come into great play. Um, basically, ailerons are going to be neutral. Um, Elevators, yeah, I can see why you wouldn't want to take off with your elevator all the way down, which means you take off, you're going to uh, be directed towards the ground, probably a little crash. Speed brake, we know that that's one, and flaps is a primary one. Stabilizer trim, I like that one also. So I guess I'm going to go with B because I can find a reason for all four of them. Besides, elevators is in the other two options, and that's the only one that we might be a little unsure of. So the fact that speed brake, flaps, and stabilizer trim is in the right answer, I'm going for that, and so should you. We did notice in A has the steerable fuselage landing gear. Now, don't, sometimes I'll look at the other options just so I better understand them. I figured that I won't jump to them as an answer because I'll say steerable fuselage landing gear. We hadn't saw that one before. Okay, so steerable fuselage landing gear means that if you're starting to take off, you probably want the steering to go straight forward, and if you're not, you're going to get a part of the warning alarm. I can kind of see that. Matter of fact, it's indicated in the list of five below. All right, enough about takeoff configuration. How about control surface indicating system? Now this is a rarity also, but I guess some aircraft might have something like this, where you can actually look at where your ailerons are located, your left and your right. Your what's that? A spoiler? Uh, I can't quite read it. Is that FLT? Flight spoiler? And your elevator in the rear and your rudder. Wouldn't that be nice if you had moving indicators that show you exactly where your control surfaces are located? Um, the trim tabs, we don't see that in this option unless they're talking about, the trim tabs are normally on the elevator, not on the wing, which these appear to be. When an aircraft's primary flight control surfaces are set for a particular phase of flight, such as landing or takeoff, the corresponding control surface indicating system will show. Now, you're not going to get a lot of questions about the control surface indicating system, and they may have eliminated this question from the question bank, but just in case it pops up, at least you have some awareness of this indicating system. Um, so, what is that system going to show? Um, are you going to show flap and slat position? B, speed brake position, misspelled, or C, trim position? Well, trim should be one. Flap and slat, you're mostly talking about control surfaces. Even though flaps look a lot like a control surface, they're mostly like an extended wing. The control surfaces you don't use them to control. Uh, I mean, you control your speed a little bit for takeoff and landing, but you do not use it to move about the three axes. So, uh, which one am I eliminating with that? Flap, and it's relative to slat, um, which I believe in some aircraft is the leading edge flap. And trim, I do like trim. What about speed brake? Well, that was in the takeoff configuration. This one here is control surface indicating. So trim position is the only control surface that is going to help with your control over the aircraft. So trim. Okay, alert, a different answer. Are set for a particular phase of flight, such landing corresponding controls show. And then what appears to be a Jeppesen with the J, they're thinking it's flap and slat. Yeah, I think the publisher is wrong here. And in general, if Prepware has one answer, 8948 indicates Prepware or perhaps ASA numbering compared to a Jeppesen test guide, which basically these are the FAA publishes the questions, they don't publish the answers. But in this case, I do not believe that flap slats are considered a control surface, so Jeppesen is wrong. The correct answer is C. How does a takeoff configuration warning differ from a landing gear warning? All right, takeoff configuration, it measures other things than just landing gear. It also, as a matter of fact, it doesn't even really measure landing gear, because if your landing gear is not already down, your takeoff isn't going to start. So landing gear lets you know that your landing gear is down, mostly for landing, and takeoff is mostly takeoff. It measures different systems like the flaps, slats, speed brake. What else was it? The other ones too. Takeoff warnings are usually intermittent horns, while landing gear warnings are steady. I do remember this now. It was filed way a long time ago. All right. Warning. So how does the warning itself differ from the landing gear warning? I guess I'd be marked wrong because I did not understand the question. I jumped into a system as opposed to the warning itself. So how does the warning, what's different about a warning in a takeoff configuration versus the landing gear configuration? Yeah, the horns for takeoff are intermittent, so it might go beep, 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 while landing gear warnings are just a steady beep. All right. Well, if you're studying, make a note of that. Name at least two conditions that would activate a takeoff configuration warning system in a jet transport aircraft. So similar to our other answers. The speed brake is stowed or is not stowed, would activate the warning. Um, the the flaps are not in their appropriate condition, like 10% or 10 degrees. Um, any leading edge surfaces, such as the slats or slots, um, would would also be in their correct configuration or alignment. And if there's a third one, it's going to tell me. Incorrect leading or trailing edge flap position, got it. Stabilizer position, I don't know why I keep missing that one. Or speed brake not stowed. There might be other conditions. Mach's airspeed warning system. These things are not that common. Hardly any of the systems. Just to find an illustration which matches up with the system has been a challenge. Some aircraft are equipped with the Mach airspeed warning systems that provide distinct oral warnings anytime the maximum operating airspeed is exceeded. Reducing speed below the limiting value is usually the only way to silence the warning. Kind of like your seatbelt warning in the car. The system operates from an internal mechanism inside the Mach airspeed indicator. Test switches allow an operational check of the system at any time, and that's what's shown here is the little test buttons. Maximum operating airspeeds exist primarily due to the airplane's structural limitations at lower altitudes and the airplane handling characteristics at higher altitudes. So structural limitations, especially when you're low, and handling characteristics when you're at a higher altitude. What is the function of a Mach airspeed warning system? Basically to alert the flight crew that the aircraft is reaching its maximum for structural purposes, something like that. To alert the pilot that the never exceed airspeed limit has been reached or exceeded. Okay, even a better answer. True or false? An airspeed indicator measures the differential between pitot and static air pressures surrounding the aircraft at any moment in flight. This one is obviously a two-part true and false question about airspeed indicators, which probably would be better covered in instruments. It's one of those questions that the publishers, some will have it in one section, others will have it in the other. Since most of you have already completed aircraft instruments, where we talk about the airspeed indicator a little more detail, you will see, yes, that is actually what it does. It takes in both pitot and static pressures to determine how fast the aircraft is going through the air. Basically, the pitot takes the dynamic air in the end and it would give you one measurement, but if you're at a higher altitude, you're getting less air in. So that's why the static port will basically determine the difference, uh, as because both of you could have a steady airflow, but if the pressure into the static port, all of a sudden drops because of the altitude, then you're going to get a different reading. Well, that's not it. That's, now that I think about that, I retract it, because the air that's going into it wouldn't be the same at a higher altitude because there's less air. So, roundabout, it is true. It's a differential pressure gauge that measures the difference between the ram air and the static air. And the second part of the question, an airspeed indicator measures the differential between pitot and cabin air pressures at any moment of flight. Well, we do know the differential is between the pitot and the static. So we got the pitot part right, but the static is to the outside temperature. The cabin air pressure, especially in a pressurized aircraft, is going to not have anything to do with how fast you're going through the air. So this one is false. Annunciator systems. Instruments are installed for two purposes: to display current conditions and to notify of unsatisfactory conditions. Standardized colors are used to differentiate between visual messages. For example, the color green indicates a satisfactory condition. Yellow is used for a caution of a serious condition that requires further monitoring. And red is the color for an unsatisfactory condition. Whatever part of the instrument face or of a visual warning system, these colors give quick reference information to the pilot. A little bit of a repeat from aircraft instruments also. But you might get an oral question in position and warning, so be ready. Luckily, you know all of your subjects well. What is the purpose of an annunciator system? To be able to alert the flight crew at a glance as to the condition of the various systems. To show by means of a warning light that some system parameter requires attention by the flight crew. What is the usual means for alerting the crew of jet transport that the cabin doors are not properly closed? That's going to be usually a light, probably if it's cabin doors, it's probably going to be a red light. And maybe an oral sound, perhaps. I doubt it. I think the cabin doors would just be lights. A warning light. ECAS, again, when we're talking about electronic instruments, you can see it's not the standard steam gauge where you have or you usually have a needle that's pointing to a different condition. This is all digital. ECAS, it's a engine indicating and crew alerting system. The use of it requires very little monitoring by the crew and provides quick, accurate identification and recording of problems. And normally they'll show you the maintenance chart. It shows a lot of other different items, but this one here is going to be the ones that we're mostly interested in. The condition of the fuel, the oil, temperature and pressure, the engine temperature, and the actual RPMs or Yeah, that'd be about right. Instead of counting by RPMs, though, you should go by a percentage of maximum. Hydraulics, stabilizer, flaps. These are more for the pilot. Um, and it looks like we can, this is the fuel screen, but we can switch over to electrical or uh, control or engine or other items. Why are transport category aircraft equipped with a master caution and warning system? Uh, to reduce the amount of instruments, uh, individual instruments, or they'll still have the individual instruments, but they'll also have one master that basically alerts you. I'll take a look at the oil screen because there's going to be a problem there. Um, Basically, same answer as before. It allows the flight crew to determine um, the condition of a number of systems in a quick, in a abbreviated fashion to alert the crew that a malfunction has occurred and corrective action may be required. All right. Appreciate you guys joining me again. I'll see you on the next one. Good day.